All right, hello everyone. My name is Disc, and in this video we have a level 15 Mists of Tirna Scithe. And whereas my last video, if you watched it, the Stone Vault, I primarily used that video for examples of what not to do for myself and the team, but this is going to be a quite different video of really good examples of what to do. This was a almost perfect key. We only had one death, literally the last second of the whole dungeon, but it was pretty flawless and a lot of really good examples of high execution. So that's something we really want to focus on in these keys. But if you're new to my channel, thank you for tuning in. We've had a lot of growth to my channel lately, which I've actually been loving. It's been really fun video editing more and teaching more. It's something I'm really passionate about. And if you heard me complain at all in my last video, I feel like one of the biggest problems in WoW right now is too many people are focusing on the wrong thing, and there's not enough resources out there to teach people the right things. And it's a game that's been around for 20 years. There is a lot to learn. And even as someone like myself, who I think I'm more experienced at WoW, I watch other people play at least every week, and there's always something I can learn from somebody else. So in a game that's this massive, there's just so much out there, and little tips and tricks, even maybe just a UI element you're taking from someone else. It's always best practice to be seeking knowledge and trying to grow as a player. It'll lead to a more fun experience, which, and thank you for today's video sponsor, Metafy. This is an amazing website to go check out. It is really going to open your realm to resources and teachers that are going to help you level up your gameplay and take it to the next level. And although I teach discipline for Warcraft, this is a website that's a lot broader than just Warcraft. You can learn and take lessons from anyone from any game, and it's going to be a really surefire way to kind of level up your gameplay in the matter of even 1 hour. But like always, I do want to quickly flash the talents. There's not really much changed here from my last runs, but I do want to highlight the use of defensive plays. These bottom two here, I go 1 of 2, and I really think that's all you need. I put them on a macro for 1 button. I also have a keybind for Fade on its own to desync them, but managing defensives on 1 button, since there is no global, is a really easy way to do it. I also prefer Vampiric Embrace pretty solidly back into Protective Light now that I'm breaching into 15s. Love the other one, but the extra 10% is just too massive. Then on the Discipline side, pretty much all the same. Running Void Wraith, running Extended Rift for the win. And here is a splash of the damage. So overall, I was at 461,000 per second, which is a really good number. Whenever you have an AUG in the group, you should be aiming for over 400, and without an AUG, you should be aiming for near 400. And an aggressive stance with our DPS is really going to amplify our HPS. So looking at the spread, we have the Rift and the Void Wraith vying for first and second, then all the other ones kind of falling behind. This is where you want to see. By and large, we're getting twice as many Rifts if you're keeping it on cooldown as the Mindbender, the pet, Void Wraith. So we really just want to focus on high uptime with the Rift. It's a pretty free spell. Its cooldown is pretty forgiving. A lot of times at the end of a pull, even though the pet is resetting, I'll still send a Rift to get the extra damage grab, focusing on making sure it cancels on enemies. If you send a second one, I use a /cancel aura, Entropic Rift macro for that. It's a really fun element of gameplay that I think feels a lot like Boon of the Ascended, if anyone remembers. But again, as we go through these videos, I can't always call this small details. So things to note for, things to watch for and make note of are all these different mini games within the spec. And these are the areas that you need to focus on if you're really trying to increase your output. I also think trying to min-max these mini games is probably the major source of fun for me as a player. So there's a lot you can get from these mini games, and we have to be good with switching our targets to find dots for our penance. We have to be good at switching our targets for catching executes. When we catch and execute, our Shadow or Death resets, so that's really important. And then I also have a talent point into Extended Schism, so we need a way to seamlessly fall back to our Schism even when we're incentivized to leave our Schism. So I use focus targeting with my Mind Blast. Anytime I cast Mind Blast, it sets a focus, and then I have a button to return my target to my focus to kind of just track my Schism in a pretty easy way. And then we have the mini game of defensive. We have the huge mini game of our Torment spells, Inescapable Torments. We need to aim for 6. 5 is pretty common. Bonus territory is 7 and 8 with Death Execute resets. And then a huge mini game of timing our pet and rift windows. This really has to do with using add-ons like bigwigs, or there's that weak R for tracking cooldowns as well. But we want to use these add-ons and weak Rs in a very minimal approach. We don't want to track every spell of every mob. We only want to track timers for spells that have to do with timing our spells. So finding a more minimal approach where we're not tracking everything is really going to do a lot to kind of make doing what you need to do a little easier. Having a more concise minimal UI is a really strong tool, and also something I teach on my Metafy. But as far as one final minigame within Discipline is min-maxing our fear. This is our interrupt. It is a pretty easy spell to use, being that it's an AoE fear bomb that is uncapped. So using a weak R like the one that I offer, it'll glow your fear icon when you have a chance, and it'll also show a bar timer of that cast that you're trying to fear. And the nice upgrade I've had to this weak R is that the glow and the bar and the audible disappear when your fear's on cooldown. So the idea is you want to try and get one fear pull per pull. It is a 45-second cooldown. A rule of thumb if you're new to fear is at least try and play it after your pet rift window ends. If you don't have anything left to give as far as healing, preventing damage is the next best thing you can do. So just try that if you're starting out with fear. And using my KY nameplates and using that weak R is a really easy system to maximize it. But again, please check out my Metafy if you're interested in any private lessons. I do believe that these videos have a lot to offer, but a one-on-one environment where we can kind of look at your deficits in areas where you might not be min-maxing the best serves a lot better of a purpose, in my opinion. And I've put a lot into developing out my page, so please go check out my new offerings over there. I'm trying to make it a little bit of a one-stop shop. I did open up memberships on the Metafy, and I know primarily right now I have memberships on YouTube, which have been really, really great. I want to just manage both for the time being. If you're a member of my YouTube, I appreciate it. There is no ask for you to switch over to Metafy, but I'm just going to kind of monitor the two, and if over the course of the next few months people switch over, or maybe just one dwindles and the Metafy wins out, I probably will make a full switch, being that YouTube takes 30% and Metafy would only take 8%. It might be a really nice way to consolidate my approach to teaching and have all of my teaching offerings on Metafy, and just have YouTube as like small interactions in the comment section and the host of my weekly videos. And lastly, if you're interested in any of my UI elements, those are open to all of my students through Metafy, or if you're a member of the YouTube channel or the Metafy, you have access to my add-on codes just by having a subscription. With all that being said, this is a really good key. Pay attention to all of the execution, the timing, all of these mini games, and yeah, let's go ahead and clip over to the key. All right, here we go. At the top of a key, always a good idea to start planning where your PI is going to go. And the reason I bring that up in this intro is because I was giving it to the DK who was in our group versus the Shaman, the Enhancement Shaman, which is just a much better pick right now. And because of that, we did have some seconds lost. You know, it's marginal, but it was lost not giving it to the Shaman. I think I clue in halfway through, but we'll see. Let's look at that on first boss. But first pull here, really all I'm thinking is to stay in melee. I want to set my focus target early. And I want to lay a barrier just for the ease of the transition. There's the PI. And these dots on tank, you really want to dispel those at a 2-stack. And here goes my rotation. Divine Star early for the damage grab. Working a Radiance into the Rift. Really, that's the name of the game with the Rift, is you want a Radiance during it so that everyone's covered with Atonement for the collapse. And then, like usual, we get 1.5 rotations per pull. So pet is done, but I send another rift, switch my targets to preserve my dots. And on the subject of these half rotations, something I wanted to mention is a really surefire way to kind of amplify your output in those half windows is cast a shield. So arguably it is going to be less healing than the pet and the rift. Still substantial, but less. So if we work in these shields, we can guarantee we're keeping our Words of the Pious active. And the requirement of a half window is just smites and penance. that is exactly what our tier set is. So we can guarantee that our tier set and our Wheel and Woe is going to be charged. So working in these shields after our penance and our half window is a really nice way to just kind of amplify your output in those windows. Okay, so in this pull, I open with a healthy amount of dots, watching for that 2 stack of the magic dot. And you want to lead with just a half window here. And it's mainly because arguably we could fit a Mindbender as well. But we really want to make sure we're loaded for when these guys cross that 50% threshold. We can see it marked on their nameplates. So we're approaching 50, leading with healthy atonements and some raptures for the comfort. And here goes the pet rift window. Also queuing in both of my defensives. Worked in a radiance during the rift for coverage. And that was 6 torments, using some of the final raptures I had just for coverage. Yeah, and it looks like the way this pull worked out, I send 1 more rift here, so it was 3 rifts and 1 pet. And going into this next boss, there's really not much to it. Our spells do match up with the damage profiles pretty perfectly, but we really want to play defensives on the Embrace Darkness. On open, we just want to send Pet and Rift for a damage grab, and then we want to spend time just farming the Pet back. So instead of a half window in between, we want to spend a little bit of time smiting for a full rotation again to cover the Embrace Darkness, which also is a great time to queue in Vampiric Embrace. So let's see how that goes. Here is my damage grab, just sending the Pet and the Rift, working in a Radiance for the Harsh Discipline. 5 Torments, pretty good. And here we are. Pet is 20 seconds away. We just want to spend this time pressing Smites and or Penance to get the Pet back. We really want it to line up with this Embrace Darkness, which is coming in a second. So this is where we want to queue in Vampiric Embrace to mitigate the damage. Also, Fade and Desperate Prayer, I stagger those. And this is a full defense. This ticking damage can really F you up. Worked in a Radiance for the coverage. Fade is pressed. Vampiric Embrace is queued. So now that my pet window is over, I'm dwindling a little bit on what I have to offer. This is a great place for Rapture. There goes my Desperate Prayer. And then we have a fun little play here. We both thought Barrier at the same time, so that's kind of cool. And approaching that 20% line, what's really important here is to have your Pet Rift available. So there goes PI on the DK. If you check the damage for this fight, you can see what I mean by not the best pick, and it cost us some time. But I think I clue into that coming up here. And that is just a burn phase, doing as much as we can. 6 torments, and we switch. And it's kind of just a rinse and repeat at this point. We want to send a Pet Rift rotation on the start of this phase. That's just for a damage grab. And then we want another full Pet Rift rotation for the Embrace Darkness. And noticing my Penance button, it kind of has a red glow around it. That's a really nice upgrade I've had to my UI. I think it's a lot more intuitive than my old solution, but my Penance will glow red when my current target is missing a dot. Okay, so here goes the Embrace Darkness. Fade is played. Here goes the Pet and Rift. Radiant. I'm going to lose some torments here. Let's see. 5 torments only. That is alright. The Vampiric Embrace was used. Straight into Rapture, just like before. And we're about to cross that 20% threshold, and my pet is not ready. So that's kind of something I'm thinking from third party here. So I open with just some smiting. Shield very last for the Words of the Pious, Pet, Death, Death, Rift, Penance. And I hope I catch this collapse. It looks like... well, maybe it's fine. Okay, 7 torments, pretty good. Moving on. So coming up through the maze, there are interrupts that I have queued in with my KUI and that weak aura, but for the most part, we have to be outranged. So interrupts are on the team, but we do have targeted casts, we do have bleeds to watch for, and these are all weak auras that kind of tie into my grid too. It's going to really help you see what's going on. So right there, the Evoker had it. The idea is you want to shield your allies before they take that hit, and it is a really good opportunity, if you have one, to use a Wheel and Woe shield. I think that one was kind of a weak shield, but we have some good examples coming up where with Wheel and Woe and tier set, you can fully mitigate those attacks as long as you're seeing them with that targeted cast weak aura. I think that shield was a little bit bigger. Radiance out of combat, always a really good idea. Go ahead and let your Radiance start cooling down, and you get to go into the next pull with a proc. So I was picked on that first one, so I went double defense plus a shield. And I gave PI to the DK again. So let's watch the damage here. I think that was a defensive Dark Reprimanding to myself. I just really wanted to play it safe. Couple executes for 6 torments. Looks like I could have had a 7th, but missed it. And then you can still always go for half rotations in these maze pulls. So I open with a pet and rift, and then I close with just a rift. And yeah, looking at the damage for that pull, the DK who had PI was still in second. So Enhancement Shaman, I do have a chart on my Metafy. So I got a pretty big shield on me on this one. Good. So I do have a chart. It's not easy to find online, but you can check my Metafy too. It's specs that do most, benefit most from PI. Enhancement is far in the lead right now. I'm not sure exactly what it is about them, but Enhancement Shaman is the way to go. I hope I get on track on next PI. I think I do. Shield ahead of the targeted cast. Working a Radiance for the Harsh Discipline. Executes I think I can grab here. For 6 torrents. I really like that red glow on the penance. It's kind of, I used to have an icon, or like a space for an icon, if a dot was missing. But I think it makes more sense just to have my penance kind of glow red if it's falling on a dry target. And that was a really nice Wheel and Woe shield. It fully mitigated that attack. I think that was Wheel and Woe plus tier set on myself. So the white dotted line is a really useful tool for us as disc priests. If we're ever in a situation where we're flash healing someone instead of a shield, it is not using our kit to the best of its abilities. Okay, there's a PI on the Shaman. Here goes the Pet Rift. And when it comes to the placement of my Radiance, so all you have to do is cast a Radiance while the Rift is out. I try and delay it until after the 3 blasts for the Rift extension. So I try, when I can, to backload the Radiance. It gives you a little bit longer of a window of coverage. And getting those 3 blasts for extension is very important. So I try and do that first, just as a rule of thumb. A front-loaded Radiance will still work for the collapse, but a backloaded Radiance is a little bit better. Radiance in between combat. And I've really been liking that macro to place the world markers. It's all 8 of them, so the color kind of turns it white. I've really been liking that. It's very useful for us here. And when it comes to this boss, that was a really good grip on the Evoker, or the mini boss rather. So anticipating frontals, I try and place myself opposite of the other ranged player. So if the chance I'm not picked, I can grip the other person to safety. So a lot of times with grip, it's something you can set yourself up for. And that one just happened to work out. And that was 6 torments. And I think here on this mini boss, I go for 2 full rotations. So instead of 1.5, I spend time just farming the pet back. And here goes a second full rotation. And since I have a second full rotation here, it's going to be interesting to see where my CDR is going into next pull. Let's see how I do. Okay, 7 torments, pretty good. So I'm noticing those 7 and 8 are more rare than they used to be. It's very common I'm getting 5. It's less common I'm even getting 6 now, so 7 and 8 is even further off. But still possible. Probably could have sent a rift there, but missed it. Radiance out of combat. And when it comes to playing the maze game, it's better to do it while mounted. So you can kind of zip around and at least grab 2. Oh, except on this one. So on the group that's 5, you kind of have to do your job a little bit better as a healer. Oh, another PI to the DK. So it's something I've definitely learned since this video. But PI on the enhancement is going to be a much better bid here. I was selected with the bit, a really quick defensive play, Desperate Prayer and Fade. It looks like now I'm going to go for just a half window. See if I keep my dots active here. Yep. Switch targets to keep my dots alive. Use focus targeting to fall back to my Schism. And I have upgraded my mouse recently. I think it's the Logitech 905 or something like that. But my mouse wheel has a tilt feature which you can macro. I have my tilt feature switched to tab targeting. So if I'm ever on a target and my dot falls off, I kind of just push on the side of my wheel to go to the next target for the penance. And it's been a really, really nice upgrade. And then my penance and return to focus keybinds are also similar. So I can switch targets, penance, and then press the same button again to fall back. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so on the pull here, you just want to send a damage phase, pretty standard for the start of bosses. A pet rift window, just vying for damage. And then also very similar to most scenarios, we go for a half rotation here. So noticing on his nameplate, we have the phases marked as little ticks. Thank you to the author of that add-on for taking my request. Except it looks like it bugged out there. I think it'll come back. Yeah, there it is. But it actually looks like I went for 2 full rotations there. A little different than my standard play. Let's see how this goes. Yeah, on the Shaman, thank God. And not a bad idea if you have Barrier to lead with Barrier on the first phase. The intermission phase is also a great time for Rapture, but I do not send my offensive spells there. It is better to give those to the boss. So I send Barrier first because it's a long cooldown. I want it to go ahead and start refreshing. Here goes my pet rift window, just a couple seconds delayed, but it's not really going to change much. We get a full rotation plus a half rotation. And 6 torments. Here goes a half rotation. With the half rotation, really just making sure I get 2 penance into my rift. And I believe on this next phase, I'm going to lead with a Radiance into Rapture. So our Raptures are going to hit harder on those with Atonement due to our Mastery. So a really good combo is Radiance into a Rapture. You're buying a proc, you're atoning the group, and your Raptures are going to hit harder. So I Radiance Penance and then Rapture. So one thing to consider is Rapture also benefits from Wheel and Woe. So if you cast a shield, if you cast a Penance before your first Rapture shield, it's just a really nice way to multiply your multipliers. I guess add together your multipliers. Okay, so coming out of the phase, we go for a full rotation. And on the last phase of this boss, he does switch at 10%. I do play it a little differently. I go ahead and play my Pet Rift window on the intermission just to get one more round. Okay, PI on the Shaman. Good, good. Okay, so here's a half rotation, just trying to push him over the edge. And then on phase, I go for a full rotation. And I send my Schism on the add. I think arguably, even though the boss can't take damage, sending the Schism on the boss would have had more benefit. So kind of watch that here. And it's something I've changed since this also. And so even though the boss can't be targeted or attacked, or hurt, I mean, you can still execute it for the double executes. Yeah, so I lost 9 seconds of the Schism. I would have rather that be on the boss there. You got 7 torments. But yeah, even though the boss is taking reduced damage, it does not affect your healing. So you can still switch to the boss, get the double execute, get the healing, get the torments, and then go back to the add for your Void Blast. But I think in that situation, it would have been better if I had cast my Schism on the boss, because we did have, it was almost 10 seconds of loss there. Radiance in between combat. And with these guys, they have a group-wide hit. We're tracking that one timer on the nameplate. It is a great place to have your pet and rift flowing. And I precast a fade. And also notice on a pull like this, I held my pet and rift just slightly. Because if you play it too early, you're going to lose the healing component that is very important here. So I cast my rift on the threatening one, but switch targets to preserve my dots. Radiance in the middle of the rift. Gave myself a single shield before the hit. So a really nice defensive combo is you can flash heal someone, followed by a shield on yourself. It'll proc your protective light, plus the shield on yourself. It's a really nice defensive play, those two as a combo. So this is a pretty big pull. Usually I'll go Pet Death, Rift Penance, but in a pull like this, I really just want the damage grab. So I believe I go Pet Rift, Penance, Death. Let's see how I play it. And you want to front load your Divine Star. Down Shaman, that's good. Pet Rift Penance, Star. I didn't even play Death. So lost 1 torment there. I still got 5, so I'll take it. But it looks like the way things were happening, got that death. Usually doesn't happen. And then also something I've changed in my UI. So they were coming in, but on a pull like that was light aggro, a fade is a really good defensive play there. But something I've changed is my pain sup. So right now it's sitting at 2. I would call that loss in a sense. So I've added a glow to my pain sup whenever it's at 2 charges, because that is worth playing. So a preemptive barrier plus a single target shield on myself, followed by the pet rift window. And so again, with these pulls where the group has a big hit, switch targets to preserve my dots, you do want to delay your windows to make sure you're getting the heal component that you need. 7 torments for the win. A shield from myself and the Evoker, plus fade on that one. So when it comes to our defensive plays and predictable damage, you always want to play a defensive if you can. And right there, it's always nice as well to kind of keep an eye on your party's positions. And since the Evoker was in that big green attack, ripped him out for the win. And this pull is not too much to it. I want to pet, rift, penance, death, ideally. Let's see what I do. Yep, pet, rift, penance, star, then death. Okay, so I didn't forget it that time. And it's a really small note, but if you watch these plays here on these bridges, if you listen to the spells that I have turned on for audible cues, it's a slight disconnect. So this was something I noticed when I watched this video back, and I think it's a really good example of kind of my philosophies. So if I were to want to hear the start of any attack, it would be the big green circles that can knock you back. And in this poll, I had it mixed up. I had those with no audible, and then I had minor spells with audibles. So that's kind of the philosophy. When it comes to ground damage or things you have to dodge, it's really worth your while to hear the start of those casts. So ground damage, frontals, things like that, you want to have audible cues on. And I have changed my bigwig since then. So I really think the only thing you need to hear back there are the big green circles. And I think I had on audible cues for the bees, which almost means nothing. And here we have the big hits in group again. I delayed my window. 5 torments. So I have a rift to give. Trying to line it up here with the acid attack. And then also I don't get any good fear plays in this dungeon. Oh, I went for a full window. Okay, good. I don't get any good fear plays in this dungeon, but these pulls with the beetles, they do have a shield mechanic, which I have queued in to my KUI and the weak aura. So the shield is something you really want to interrupt if you can, and you hear it with that trumpet audible. But in this group, our DPS are really doing their job. Dot 2 penance to spread the final 2. My pet is almost ready. Another PI on the DK. And on that one, I gave myself a pain sup because I did not have any other defensives. My Fade and Desperate Prayer were down, and I was sitting at a 2-step. But right there, switch targets to preserve my dots, using focus targeting to fall back to my Schism. Here we have another attack incoming, which I'm trying to cover with a Rift. Let's see how that goes. I precast a Radiance on top of it. And lost my dot spread there, but that is okay. Alright, and on boss pull here, we go for just a damage grab, pet rift window. A Radiance out of combat. Shield is the last thing I do for Words of the Pious. And then I go into my window. So when it comes to the ground damage, you want to step lightly because it's like a smart mechanic or whatever you call it. It repeats your movements, so keep it small. Gave the Paladin a shield there for the body and soul to help him kind of negate that mechanic. And then noticing on boss we have these tick marks. Very important we have pet and rift for those phases as the consume. So in this little interim, I send just a half rotation, letting my pet rest. And leading into the consume, it is best to lead with generous long atonements. So here goes Pet Rift with Vampiric Embrace. Worked in a Radiant. And the nice thing about these white swirlies, they are slightly longer of ground damage mechanics. So you are a little bit more free to kind of cast and move late. Okay, so my pet is 20 seconds away. I believe what I do here is just spam Smite. Smite and Penance are CDR for the pet. And they have dotted lines on them when they're on you. Here goes the Pet Rift window. Five Torments is all we can get. And in this phase, I'm really just trying to get my pet back, plus sending a half rotation. So here goes the Rift. Pet is almost back, which is good. A shield on the tank for the body and soul to help him kind of run away. And we are approaching this final consume here. So we really want to have the group topped. I believe I might even rapture them just for comfort. Yeah. Rapture is nice here too because it gives speed on every shield. So now we all have a little bit of a buffer. Both defensives are played. Pet Death, Rift Penance with another Vampiric Embrace. The nice thing about Vampiric Embrace, at least in this dungeon, is these key mechanics are a minute and a half apart. So you can get a really nice group-wide heal on all the damaging attacks that need it. So at this point, we have no more consumes, and we are approaching 20% here. I just got my pet back. And I think what I do, if you're ever on a boss and you're a couple of percent away from 20, it is worth your while to kind of delay to go for an 8 torment window. So I think that's exactly what I'm doing. Okay, here goes Execute Range. So Pet, Death, Death, Rift Penance. And this is a really fun rotation. Let's see if I can get all 8 here. I work in a Radiance. Wow, I only got 6. Makes sense. So I think I flubbed my rotation. I'd have to watch that back. But there was too many casts in there of something. 6 is okay. And watching the Shaman real quick. We're about to have our only death of the key. I think he's trying to split the ground damage, but maybe his like big toe was in it. Boom. So that sucks. He died at the very last second of the key. It would have been perfect otherwise. I'm still going to call it a perfect play. But this was my first 15 for the win. It was a really good key, a lot of really good synergy between the team. I think really good examples of how to place our spells as a Disc Priest. The team themselves were managing the kicks on point. But when we're trying to level up our gameplay, we really have to think about all these different minigames in order to min-max our spec. So playing our Psychic Screen is a huge one, even though we didn't have any examples in here. But then playing our defensives, anytime there's incoming damage, we have to play the minigame of switching targets to keep our dots alive with penance, switching targets to find executes for our torments, and then using focus targeting to fall back to our schism to not lose that value there. The very important minigame of getting these torments. So 6 is a good baseline we should always aim for. 7 and 8 is bonus territory, but 5 is still pretty common. And all of these things are subjects I do cover on Metafy. So it's a really great website that you should check out. It offers coaching for any game out there. I am one of their, I think their only discipline teacher, and we have a lot of success. Most of my students only book 1 hour, but I think if you can book at least 2 hours, we can cover a lot more. Whereas lesson 1 might be groundwork and you still take a lot away from it. A lesson 2, we can kind of build upon that and delve into different subjects further that we weren't able to in lesson 1. Also, if you are interested in any of my UI elements, they are open to students of mine through Metafy. They're also open to any members of my YouTube channel or Metafy. So there's a members bulletin board. That is where I will keep these updated once per month. Every first of the month, I will update them and recycle the codes. But we've had a lot of new subscribers to the channel lately since the start of the expansion, which has been pretty cool. I've really been loving teaching more, video editing more, and connecting with you guys more. So thank you again for tuning in. Don't forget to check out my Metafy. Please join the channel as a member if you've not already. And until next time, Disc.